Good morning. I'm going to call this November 16th, 2021 Hancock County Commissioners' Special Meeting to order. Gentlemen, to direct your attention to the agenda and ask if there are any adjustments.
I'm going to move to approve the agenda as presented with the exception of moving item 5, sheriff, to between items 7A and B.
Seconded.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Any other adjustments? Hearing none, our agenda is in order. And I'd move to public comment. Is there anybody out there this morning who would like to make a public comment? Rebecca, you all set? Zoom? Hearing none and seeing none. We'll move on. Minutes of the last meeting.
I'm going to move to approve the minutes of the November 2nd regular meeting as presented.
Seconded.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Move on to our ARPA funds. Good morning, Kitty.
Good morning. Morning, Commissioners. To start off today, we're pleased to request from the Hancock County Commissioners their official approval toward the following nonprofit organization. The listed funding is part of the American Rescue Plan nonprofit grant program to the Ellsworth Garden Club in the amount of $5,603.67.
I'm going to move to acknowledge the award of an ARP revenue loss grant to the Ellsworth Garden Club in the amount of $5,603.67 as awarded by the Grant Awards Committee.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. We have a representative this morning.
This is our exercise.
Face, Rebecca, come up with us. Hold that great big check right up front here and look at Rebecca and smile.
Oh, you're good without the mask.
She says, I am.
You look better without that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All set. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you to the county commissioners on behalf of the Garden Club.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we are down to the last couple of weeks. I have no new applications. So I assume that's gonna just sort of ease on out.
So let's just take a quick second here. Somewhere here, we have a funding page on it. Don't we?
Yes.
The Garden Club is not on that. So what roughly that was $5,600?
5,600 roughly.
I thought I put it on there.
It should be on there. It's the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a Bar Harbor Garden. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so to date, we've spent $132,000. We have 168 left in that account.
No, actually,
No, just the other way.
actually, I think you're looking at an old one. The one that we have is, there's 162.
370.
Yeah.
Spent,
No,
No.
left.
Left. We spent 137,629.50.
so it must be one.
Yeah, you're missing the, for some reason, you're missing the Ellsworth Garden Club, but
Well, that's what we just awarded, right?
Yeah.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, it wasn't on here.
Updated.
Yeah, okay. All right, so we've got 162,000 left in that account. No, like that. Okay. Moving on, Kitty,
Premium pay.
you want to do that now, or do you want to?
What's on your agenda?
Oh, we have update broadband first.
Okay, we can do broadband.
We'll be glad to hear from John this morning.
And if you want.
Morning, John.
Good morning. I'll give you a quick update. So we're continuing the outreach. And we're gonna get an email blast this week. Actually, it's gonna go out to those from Kitty, and then we're gonna follow up one-on-one with each of them. And that was probably 8 towns. So this were, shouldn't say towns, groups, some multiple towns. Some have some good projects going on, others, not gonna qualify. It's just not, falls under the ARPA, rules. It's just different type of things. So that's going well. We'll have a vetting, our first round of how we're going to do the vetting by the end of this week. We've got a couple of them kind of push against that to make sure that it works, our process works. So we'll keep working on that as well. And then we're going to have another public public forum, and we're debating that on the way in. That it's going to be December 6th was a plan, but we might push that a couple days to the 8th. Scott's just hearing about that, so. But that'll be another, like one you mentioned, you were at Bill at the other commission the other day. So we'll do that. And like I said, we'll continue the outreach on the other towns to make sure what's going on mapping wise. We pulled in some of the data from the 477. We have some other consultants that have done some work, and they've offered us to give us their data as well. So we'll pull those in as well so we can see the different towns. Start identifying projects that are underway, projects that maybe don't need, town projects that don't need funding, others that where one of the ideas of the mapping is who's unserved, right? Who's underserved, who's unserved by certain definitions. So we have that going on. And then we have the infrastructure bill that we'll start digging into so we can understand how this funding for broadband can help projects move forward as, because that money's going to be a ways out, I'm sure, timeline wise, I should say. So we'll, keep an eye on that. So broadband landscape as funding comes across, because we also still have the Treasury Capital Fund that came out. That'll be released sometime next year as well. So again, we just want to make sure that these monies, we're talking about for broadband here, are funding programs that are going to keep going.
John, sometime in the last week or so, Scott mentioned a bill in Congress that's going to perhaps make use of the funds less restrictive, extending the timeline for spending them and so on. Are you familiar with that at all, John?
I'm waiting to hear, I think, like everybody.
I'm just curious if that would make it more accessible, broadband funds more accessible to communities that aren't qualifying today.
They could, right? I mean, that's all in the rules. That's what we kind of keep looking at, right? Because the rules have been 25-3, Mid-Connect Maine said 50/10, capital projects say 100/20. Haven't seen what the new Treasury rules are going to be. I think NTIA is going to be running that one for the Treasury for this new, I should say, the new infrastructure. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, I find a challenge, hearing the news of the 300 million, and we don't even know if that's accurate. It might, we've got to be ready. But there's also a fine line there between spending too quickly because other funds may fund some of these projects, and the restrictions may become less that we can do. So it's, I don't know, on the way in, I was sort of wrestling with, what do we do here? Do we sit back a little bit, or, any comment on that?
Yeah, I think that this funding obviously isn't going to solve the problem, right? What we talked about before. But what it will do is it will keep some projects moving forward, and it'll kickstart some others, right? And help them say, okay, we don't get to take this serious because the other real money is coming. But this, almost call it seed money, so to speak. But this money, continues projects that are going and are going to be ready, because there's going to be different windows of opportunity, right? We're talking a few years as we go through this. So, the first window is going to be the NTIA money. We've got some Connect Maine grant funding going to be happening probably the first of next year. And then you've got this capital projects funding, that's coming through. That's 129 million. And as soon as the state figures out their grant program for that. So, you don't want to be waiting until that's ready, because then you got to play catch up. They're going to play catch up, and that's just too hard, for these towns, because everything takes time. As you know, in the government, everything takes a little time. So to get some of these towns moving and projects going the way they should.
I kind of feel like it's the money that we're dealing with is kind of priming the well. You know what I mean? Like, we're getting the projects moving forward. Some of them that are far enough along, we're going to help to complete. But like you said, it's just a matter of us facilitating
That's all.
and kind of keeping it moving forward, especially in the beginning time periods.
Yeah, from a county
We're gonna do what
perspective,
we can do, and that's what we, and that's it, right?
exactly. You know, from a county perspective, looking at it as a whole, saying, okay, here's what we can do, right? Here's what we've got, and we can kind of help push stuff.
Well, I think a perfect scenario is that if we had town A that says we have 100,000 in the bank, we need 200,000 to apply for a grant, and the deadline is in 3 weeks. Yeah, to me, that's where we kick in right there. We can't tell them, well, we're gonna wait and see where we're gonna spend all our money. I mean, that's
Yeah, that's right.
That's an example of where we would
Yeah, you spend it.
write the
you go.
check, write the check and move it along. So as opposed to a town that's done nothing and spending a lot of money, just encouraging.
Then there's nothing, this again, but this money would complement some money that they can get from, say, Connect Maine, right? The towns that are just starting, lesser of it, still. And that's the other part of our vetting process, to make sure that we're looking at it all from all angles.
And I gotta tell you, John, your recommendation weighs heavy on our decisions, so don't be afraid to, to voice it. I
Okay.
mean, that's why we hired you. We need somebody who's in the know
Yeah.
to help us. So,
Can do.
Chair.
yes, ma'am.
John, I think you touched on it a little bit, but with a lot of these grants, it requires matching money
Correct.
to obtain these grants, and probably that would hold true for the future.
Yes.
Maybe a little less of a requirement, maybe, in order to finish the project. So again, I think that's one of the reasons that we're gonna need some of these monies, and applying those monies may be a little bit of a question as well, so.
Right, and they want to see it, right? So when you go through the grant process, like, okay, where's the rest of your funding coming from?
Right.
No grant wants to fund everything.
Right.
So, okay, we have these from the town, these from the county, and these from Rich Uncle.
Yep.
Whatever.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, John. So, Kitty, let's talk about premium pay. To date, we've had, by the deadline, we had 7 communities respond, correct?
Correct.
And gentlemen, it appears that the information we got from those communities leaves us believing that it's going to take more work to flesh out exactly what they're reporting, to see how it meets the guidelines, and whether or not we want to consider some modifications to our guidelines, considering what they've been reporting. And first and foremost, in my mind, I'm not dismayed by the fact that only 7 communities responded. I think that's an indication that they had to, that's just not the priority for what little bit of funds they got. But I think for the 7 that did, I would like to respond to those. But I think it's time that we had Kitty spending her efforts on perhaps more important things. And so I'd like to recommend, in fact, I'm going to make a motion that's going to basically award funds up to not to exceed an amount of $40,000 to the 7 communities who responded. And once they confirm to us that their communities have approved spending the amounts that they indicated in the survey. If we're going to contribute towards the town's premium pay, then we need to come up with a way to do that. And I think it's just becoming very time consuming, laborious to keep delving into the weeds here, trying to figure out. And so I would just like, I think that's going to amount to 4 communities getting 40,000 and the other 3 getting the amount they requested. Your comments?
So let me ask, if you go about it this way, what kind of stipulations are you putting on the towns of the 40? Is it still sticking, like, I guess,
My theory is that each one of them have indicated to us how much they would contribute.
Yeah.
And provided they do in fact contribute the amounts that they told us they would on the survey, we would contribute amount 2 to 1 county to the community up to a maximum amount of 40,000. So the key is for us to confirm that yes, in fact, they have approved, they're going to pay from their ARPA funds for premium pay, and then we'll contribute towards it, so. Yes.
So I'm looking at that sheet that was in, in the electronic packet. Is that what you're
Yeah.
looking at? Okay, so there's 7 communities here. And the communities that I'm not quite following this. It 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that are gonna contribute, right? Is that what that,
No, I think what you're looking at is full-time, part-time. So the first section says how many full-timers and how much are they willing to allocate. The second section was how many part-timers and how much were they willing to allocate to part-time.
See, so like Lemoyne only has part-time people, right? And Trenton only has part-time people, so just looking at that column.
okay, yeah,
See what
so really, we only can look at that 1, 2, that first column, right?
Well, it depends on what community you're talking about. If you're talking
Yeah, look at
about
both
full-time
columns.
departments, you're looking at the first column. You're looking at part-time, you gotta go back to the balance. You need to look at both.
Yeah.
They reported under a different column,
Like,
depending on full-time and part-time.
sorry, Blue Hill and Bucksport have a combination.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what that total is, that total column.
The total would be total full-time and then total part-time. So you'll see a total for their full-time allocation and a total for their part-time allocation
Okay, and that number in black,
would be Hancock County match based upon the previous conversation, which should equal exactly half or close to half of what they've allocated. Their allocation half of what the
Yeah,
county would
ours is
match.
Twice what they,
Yeah.
our amount should be twice what they allocated.
okay, so. Okay, Blue Hill here is the first one that has 2, right?
Yes,
And I'm just not, what's their share of that, Blue Hill's share of that? Is it the sum of,
35,500
so it's the sum of those 2
of
columns,
those 2 columns, and then ours would be twice that amount,
which is 70,100.
correct?
Yeah.
So you're saying, that's why I'm asking that. So you're saying that we're not gonna go over 40,000 total?
And here's why. If we were to go back and sit down with Blue Hill, I think we would find that they're reporting some that don't meet the criteria.
Yeah,
But you've got to look at every member and whatnot. And decide exactly what that true number is based upon our criteria.
yeah,
It's a lot of friggin' work.
yeah.
I'm trying to avoid. Also, we got a report from Lemoyne, and Lemoyne has computed that differently than that criteria, but they raised some interesting issues in that one of the things we wanted is certified officers. Certified means certified by the municipality, by the agency. But they have some officers that aren't certified, but they were at every accident scene, directing traffic. They were helping cleaning up the station. They were just as vulnerable to the virus as the people who were certified, and yet our criteria doesn't allow that. So what I'm saying is that let's put this thing to bed. Let's just come up with a number that we're not going to exceed, pay everybody what they're asking for up to an amount, not to exceed an amount, and close out this premium pay issue.
Okay, so what you're proposing is we're putting $40,000 in that account. And then you're divvying up that 40,000.
No, it's 40,000 per agency,
Okay,
per agency.
that's what I wanted.
No,
Okay,
yep. So it'll be a max of 40,000 per agency or the amount that they stipulated in the survey. If it's less than, our contribution is less than
now I'm
40.
following. I did.
So, and I calculated out, we've been around just shy of $225,000.
Is that what it figures out to be?
Yeah.
Yep. And that is the amount, gentlemen, that we really were looking for is how much of a contribution do we want to make to this premium pay countywide. So if we do as I'm asking, or I'm going to move, is 225,000 more than you anticipated? Did you want to contribute more? And that's really, that's the survey was intended to tell us what this is going to cost us.
Yeah, and we're past the deadline.
Yes, we're not going to get any more submissions.
And your motion, I didn't, can you reread that?
My motion is going to be that we provide ARPA funds to the 7 communities who responded to the county's premium pay survey in an amount not to exceed $40,000 for each community upon verification that they have approval for paying their allotment as they stated in the survey. So if this motion passes, we'll ask each community to certify to us that they're going to pay the amount that they reported in the survey. Once they do, we'll give them a match equal to the motion, which is 2 to 1 if our amount doesn't exceed 40,000.
If it exceeded 40, excuse me, if it's 40,000, that's what John's calculation was.
Right, John's calculating that about 4 communities are going to get 40, and the other 3 are going to get something less based upon their request.
So in no circumstances, it's going to be about 225.
It could be less if they don't,
Yeah,
if some of these communities, the town meeting says, no, we want to spend that money somewhere else, and then we're not going to spend anything. That's why I say that we're not just going to give them a check. They're going to certify that they use their ARPA funds for premium pay as well.
Yeah, I'll leave that in backup.
Is there any public comment with regards to this issue this morning? Anybody up there? Okay, I'm going to make that motion. Motion's on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion. The approval of this motion basically puts the premium pay issue behind us. That we won't be taking any further action with this, I hope. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Rebecca, Kitty, who do we want the town's reporting verification to?
I mean, before a check is cut.
They're gonna, before the check is cut, they're gonna have to verify that they have at least, town meetings approved it, the council approved it, whatever the situation.
Yeah, at least a letter. It'd be nice to maybe have that it was a copy of the minutes referencing it, but at least a letter unless you want something more, but.
Just verification,
Yeah,
whatever you're comfortable with. I'm just curious as to who we're asking to send that to. Kitty, do you want to manage that or you want us to?
Sure, no,
well, I would think that the administrator, that's,
he's got to cut the check.
yeah, that falls under him and.
Yeah, I mean,
wants to work with
Yeah,
whoever
the
he
email
wants.
but the letter should be addressed to the commission. Yeah, to the county commission, and yeah, it can be sent to both of us, but yeah. Right, and then we can discuss whether or not if the letter covers what we're discussing. Are you okay with that?
Yeah,
absolutely.
What level of detail do you want in that?
Listen, whatever you're comfortable with.
You
Yeah.
don't need to know the list of names.
No.
And the allocation.
They stated an amount on their survey.
Yeah.
So that
They'll
amount
list
can't,
it all that information.
and they can't exceed that amount.
Yeah.
But if they say we're only going to pay a certain amount of that, then we'll have to do the math again.
Right.
As to what our contributions would be.
Okay, perfect.
My feeling is based on the conversation we just had, and that motion lines up with it in a prior motion. In our prior action, this is pretty cut and dry. And we're requiring them to commit to paying it before we pay the share, our share, so. I think we've lived up to what our goal was.
Yeah, maybe a payroll date in there if we have to reference back to,
Yeah,
would be a good idea, yeah.
And I'm gonna leave that detail to you and Kitty
Okay.
to work out with the
Yep.
communities, there's only
Okay.
7 of them. As long as they understand what their obligations are, and people are comfortable, they verify.
Okay, as long as the board doesn't, and the commission doesn't want like payroll ledger or anything like that, right? No, good, okay. Yeah.
No, because we basically have that information.
Yeah, we're good. I think just referencing the payroll data, again, that's just for simplicity. If we ever have to go back to look at it and say, well, according to your letter, you paid it out on this such and such date. And
Yeah, I mean, what we don't want to see is a year down the road, they sent them a check and then the last minute they withdrew their funds and didn't pay their share. This is a match, this is not.
Right.
We're just gonna send checks to the communities, I think they all would have done a check, so.
Mm.
Okay, then let's, we've discussed that finally. The other issue, and I have not talked to Kitty about this, but I am growing more and more increasingly concerned about the availability of emergency medical services for the greater Ellsworth area. This is the traditional coverage area the county ambulance had when they left. It's now being supposedly covered by Northern Light. Just anecdotally, I'm hearing a lot of complaints, not on the quality, but on the availability of an ambulance when they need it. It really struck home for us the morning that Luke Gross was struck by a motor vehicle in Trenton at 5:30 in the morning, and they called Northern Light for an ambulance. They said they'd have to bring one out of Bangor. It's the closest ambulance they had. Thankfully, Bob's crew found an ambulance in Blue Hill. It was able to respond quicker, but it's an example. I've spoken to Bob on a couple of occasions about the problem. Bob, you've done a little initial research, is that correct?
Yeah.
Just to clarify, Northern Light did actually free up an ambulance for Luke's accident, but initially they didn't have one. I've invited Chief Gilroy from Ellsworth over as well. He shares some of the same concerns. I did some research, looking at ambulance services that are providing backup for, and I did it kind of impartially with all services. Northern Lights is one area. And I use Peninsula Ambulance. They're our next biggest ambulance service in the county. Since June 1st, Peninsula is about, Peninsula coming to Ellsworth has been right around 47 times since June of.
Now, tell us, that's because Northern Light didn't have.
Northern Light was not available. They were on another run. Now, again, I've talked to Chief Miller a little bit about this. They staff basically one service, one ambulance in the coverage area many times. And they rely on his folks for drivers, some of the other at times. But I use Peninsula, and like for Peninsula going to say the Deer Isle area, they did 38 times they backed up Memorial because they weren't available because they only had one truck. They did 4 calls each in Bucksport and Bar Harbor, Peninsula out of Blue Hill. We had a call, I think I told you a couple weeks ago in Orland, where Bucksport's crew wasn't available. They face the same shortages that everybody else does. I ended up driving the ambulances, the fire chief, to Blue Hill because they required the 2 EMTs that came to get in the back of the patient. So this is a very big shortage everywhere. But again, in just the Ellsworth, Northern Lights coverage area, it's 47 times.
Well, yeah, but that was covered by just one agency. How many times were they short? They had to go to somebody else?
Well, that's a hard question to answer. I know Bar Harbor came this last 6 months or so 11 times to Trenton, for example, to cover it. But I don't have all those numbers. That's very tedious. I've found as I delve into Spillman to look at these calls, there's just so many different numbers, there's so many different call natures, you have to go into each one and then go into the call comments to figure out exactly why that ambulance was here. I've spent a couple of days on that with just limited information. It's a lot of data there. So what I've asked my staff to do going forward is to annotate in the call comments for all the incidents they start, the service unavailable, so that we can search that as a little bit easier when we started looking at everybody and all the different calls, because we have times where they're asking us to call Washington County for Cherryfield. We have no way to really done because we don't dispatch from Northern Lights. So it's really hard to come up with those really hard, firm numbers. But I guess the easiest thing to say is, that they have a very large coverage area, Northern Light does, and they have a very hard time filling that.
Is their coverage area, have they expanded that over what, county ambulance?
No, it's actually a little bit smaller now because we've had Goldsboro and Winter Harbor, those fire departments started an ambulance service shortly after county folded Scudic EMS, which they have just recently, their primary area is Goldsboro and Winter Harbor. They've just taken on Sorrento. Sorrento to drop Northern Lights for their ambulance because half of their calls they had made. They had a very small number of EMS calls this year, and they've only made about half of them.
Northern Light, only
Northern Light, because they weren't available. Sullivan Fire Rescue started their own secondary transport. They are a backup for Northern Light in certain areas. The Franklin area, all those areas, they rely on Cherryfield to come in as a backup.
Chief, good morning. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you're willing to make some comments or answer some questions, would you come forward, please?
Yes, sir.
I understand through the media and others, whatnot, that the city's been wrestling with this issue for a couple of years, correct?
Yes.
Can you tell us what's happening in Ellsworth with regards to ambulance service? Is the city, is that available, that information available publicly?
As far as,
Any plans for what they intend to do or?
so we're in the planning stages right now, trying to determine, we're under contract with Northern Light until, I believe it's June of 23. So we're in the planning stages right now, trying to decide whether it's going to be in Ellsworth's best interest to move into being a transporting agency or to continue on and find a partnership with Northern Light or another contract service to continue to provide ambulance coverage to the city of Ellsworth.
How would that work, partnership? What do you anticipate that would look like?
Right now, the city of Ellsworth, we're a non-transporting system. If I'll use this proposal, this idea is getting in discussion with Northern Light and working with them to upgrade the capabilities of the Ellsworth Fire Department to be able to provide ALS first response, be able to put a higher level of care on the street in those first 5 to 10 minutes while we're waiting for an ambulance to come. Then we're providing a higher level of care on the onset. Right now, Ellsworth Fire Department is a BLS service. We can only provide basic life support measures, which means if I have to wait for an ambulance coming out of Bangor or may have been sitting at the Lucerne line, we're talking about a delay in care. Well, when we're talking about the life-threatening injuries, whether it's a severe motor vehicle accident, cardiac arrest, respiratory distress, diabetic reaction, that's a long time to wait for a higher level of care to come. So those are things that we're looking at is if we could develop partnerships with Northern Light to be able to provide a higher level of care to offset that situation. If they can only provide a BLS ambulance, then our personnel will be able to get on that ambulance to continue that level of care. And then the other avenue is, do we look at becoming a transporting service? The cost of becoming a transporting service is tremendous. Apparatus, equipment, personnel. The current personnel that I have on the floor can't support us running the number of calls that we're running currently.
So Chief, are you looking at a service for just the residents of Ellsworth? Is that what you're talking about?
That has been under discussion with the city councils that they're looking for the city of Ellsworth.
Something to sense.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, you need a comment. I want to understand it. And when you see an ambulance parked at the Lucerne Fire Department, that means there's no ambulance in Ellsworth. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chief.
Correct.
So what they've done is they've called an ambulance out of Bangor to stand by there until an ambulance is back again. But if that ambulance soon gets called back to Bangor, then there is not coverage. Now, every time you see an ambulance up to Lucerne, it's interesting because it seems like, oh, I'm seeing them there often. But anyways, that's because they're not available elsewhere.
And I'll give you a line straight out of the contract with Northern Light. The line specifically says they will provide an ambulance if one is available. That doesn't mean they're dedicating an ambulance to 911. That just means they're going to provide an ambulance if one is available.
And how many how many ambulances are assigned to this area and house? They have a housing facility on
They're,
East Main
they're
Street.
supposed to have two.
Two, do you think they're meeting that obligation?
No, they're running into the same situation that most EMS agencies are running into. There's a staffing shortage. There's a work fatigue burnout, so people are leaving. They're running EMS academies to try and get EMTs on the street, but that takes 6 months to get them on the street now. It used to only take 3 months to get people on the street. Now it's taking 6 months. But by work fatigue, those of us who've been in the business for 30 years, we're part of this. We've been in it a long time. We're seeing work fatigue now between years 3 and 7. So these guys are leaving the system. We're bringing new people in. So we're not changing the staffing problem. New ones are coming, it's cyclical. They're just coming in and they're going out. So there's no real boost to the system. And I don't know what the solution to that is. But I will tell you, the work fatigue is real for these guys. I mean, they're busy. And then you take private service that is also running inter-facility transports, and that work fatigue increases dramatically.
See, this is a discussion that, let me back up a little bit. The reason this is on here today is that it appears that some support from ARPA funds is available to support EMS. And Jim Ricker down to Newport has just purchased a brand new ambulance, $300,000 with ARPA funds. There is pending legislation in Congress could loosen up the restrictions to allow for perhaps structures, for startup funding. And the opportunity is here for the county using ARPA funds to basically get a regional ambulance service in place with better availability than being provided by Northern Light. And, but it's going to be a horrendous job. It's going to be a lot of research. I mean, the city of Ellsworth's been researching this thing for a couple of years now, right, Chief?
I know they were doing it before I got here. I mean, I've got documentation that goes back to when county was here. When county was closing its doors, they were looking at whether it was in their best interest to initiate an EMS system or not. So,
Now, this is significant. I mean, it's to me, this is different than broadband. Broadband is a hell of a challenge. But there is a structure in place out there. We have professionals like John in place who can research and do the work for us. But if we were to look into a regional service for Hancock County, it's going to take an awful lot of work by the right person. And I don't think that's a decision we can make today, but what I wanted to do was lay the groundwork for you, understanding that the need is there. And John, Paul?
I see the need. But I'm wondering, a regional service like that, you have to have buy-in from the folks that are, going to participate. So, I mean, that's actually more important than us at this level. We may have an opportunity to help get these folks there, but I don't think that we are the ones to get it going because we need buy-in from the community.
Well, somebody's got to get it going. And I've always thought when I started thinking about this, that it would take a stipend from the towns. They used to do that with county ambulance years ago. Orland pays $40,000 to Bucksport right now for services. And so I think, but it's the chicken or the egg for the towns. Are you willing to pony up an annual stipend? And they say, okay, what's it going to cost me? So, I mean, you've got to do the research. You've got to figure out what the general amount would be for each community in exchange for this level of service and see if they feel it's worth it. Because one thing about this, my theory is that if we did this and it became a county entity, that's what I'm talking about, because I like to see the advantage of, A, we don't have stockholders to satisfy with dividends. We don't have an owner to satisfy with profit. It's a nonprofit organization, but it's going to have to be self-sufficient. We can't take Bucksport's tax money and Barhaba's tax money and support regional ambulance service. That doesn't.
Well, that's exactly why I made my comment, is because, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't, like, Bar Harbor has its own, they're a transporting agency, right? Bucksport is a transporting agency. So when I say to truly regionalize it, you'd have to have buy-in from the communities that currently are doing that on their own.
They're going to be served by this, yes.
That's right.
Right.
So,
And that's part of the process, Paul, is that this huge amount of work, if we're ever going to do this, that's part of it, is to meet with communities, explain to them the level of service that we want to give them, and show them that it's an improved over what they're getting, and see if they think their share, their annual stipend is worth that level of involvement.
so my question is this, after you folks obviously belong to similar, I don't know what to call it, but a group, there's a Maine Fire Chiefs Association,
Mhm, yeah.
there's different associations.
Yep.
The folks in Hancock County that at your level, are they having this conversation? And I know Ellsworth is,
Right,
and I know Bar Harbor is around staffing.
right.
Because they're facing the same thing.
Right.
But without buy-in from the ones that exist and the ones that want it'll never work.
So can I make a recommendation?
Please.
So prior to my coming up here, I spent 20 years down south. And I was part of several county EMS-based systems. Both at the lowest level, and I moved up into different sides of it. So I've seen how the county systems work. I've seen how regional ambulance, just here in the state of Maine, the city of Gardner runs Gardner Area Ambulance, which means they cover 7 communities, and they have a system put in place for those communities. Just what you're talking about. What are their usage fees? What's their per capita fees? There are things. So there are models out there.
Is that run by the city? Is it a city agency or is it?
It's Gardner City. It's the city of Gardner's fire department, but there's a ambulance
Service.
Yeah, well,
But it's
Gardner Area Ambulance.
But it's a non-profit public government agency.
Right, it's run by the city. But so there's models out there. My suggestion is establish a working group for you guys, along with the Hancock County Firefighters Association, so that the stakeholders are in place and those models and discussions can be had so that, we can move forward with it. Because something does need to happen, whether it's a private service, whether it's a county-based system, there has to be a decision made. Again, I'll use my guys, for example. We're running 1,600 calls a year, probably about 1,000 of those are EMS calls. There are days my guys are out on the street waiting for Bucksport to show up, waiting for Gouldsboro to show up, PAC to show up. Northern Light does a good job when they get their trucks there. But again, you're 2 miles from the hospital waiting 15 minutes for an ambulance to come out of Bucksport. Are we doing our due diligence to provide proper service? So my recommendation is let's get a working group together of the stakeholders and see where we can go with this.
So that working group, do you see that as a county function or a function of the Hancock County Firefighters?
I think it's collaborative. I think it's collaborative. We can't make decisions for the county without the county being involved.
See, the thing is that I'm not sure, and I haven't talked to Kitty or Scott, but I don't think we're going to be able to use ARPA funds to do a startup for a private organization. Correct, Kitty?
Well, I've got it open there, but I keep going back to how does this mitigate COVID, right? That's the question they keep going back to. How is this, we know there's an impact, but how does a setup of this help mitigate the COVID? So we just got to keep going back to that argument. I think it'd be very interesting to talk to the board.
Well, sorry.
No.
Yeah, and I was gonna follow up with that, and I believe I mentioned to Commissioner Clark that we talked about this, was that Newport took that same thought process and contacted MMA. And the gentleman down there basically replied, he says, I don't think there's a better use of these funds than for this. I don't think that tie-in is, matter of fact, you could probably, even under the current rule, probably make a really good case for a building, but I think those requirements are going to be significantly loosened here in the near future.
And here's the problem for our constituents outside the city of Ellsworth who are not being directly served by another agency. If Ellsworth does, in fact, get their own ambulance service for the city, you've taken a huge chunk of the business out of a regional ambulance service that they need to make it work. And so if we wait until Ellsworth does their own thing and then try to develop something, I think you can't put enough business together there to make it function profitably.
Well, what I'm wrestling with is sometimes too much involvement hinders things. And, I'm trying to wrestle, like, I know Bar Harbor, the island basically has pretty good coverage, and where they have holes, they fill it with mutual aid agreements, and they've sort of kept government out of it. And that works pretty well, but that's just a small part of this. So what I'm wrestling with is, when I said we need buy-in from those folks because they be part of this, otherwise it doesn't work. And are they willing to give up what they have for this? And the only way they can answer yes to that is if they have equal or better service. So I'm trying to figure out the line between helping and hindering, because we could hinder if we're not careful.
But you made a comment, I'd have to challenge, and that is that government is getting involved. I mean, the town of Mount Desert just took over the private ambulance service.
Yes.
And they're going to run that out of town hall. So there's a case of where there's a private ambulance service has yielded to the government to take over and run. So
No, when I said the government, I meant our government, because this isn't an argument about private or government. That's not at all a point I'm trying to make here. I find that some of these organizations can, that's a better word, organizations, can solve the problem amongst themselves better than involving us, for instance. And I just want to be careful. If they need help from us, great. But if we're hindering in any way, that would bother me.
But Paul, we have the checkbook. That's the key to this whole thing. Now, I'm talking about using ARPA funds to get a regional ambulance service up and running. That's the overall general premise that I'm talking about. And I can tell you sitting here that there's no way I'm going to say, go ahead and organize something. I'll send you a check when you're ready. That's not going to happen. County government's going to have to be heavily involved in this, understand what's being developed, and and know that we're complying with ARPA criteria. Anyways, it's going to have to be that way. And the reason it's here today is that if we want to put this study group together, which the chief has just made a good suggestion, I still want to be able to support the work of this organization, this study group, with ARPA funds if they need those. So then we may end up hiring a paid consultant, just like John, to work on this project.
Agree with all that. My only comment is that I think that this group needs to be driving the bus, not us.
I don't think that is going to be an issue. I think there's enough frustration across the county right now with the fire chiefs. Being able to provide service to, I mean, again, you tasked us with providing a level of service that we're not able to provide right now. And we're solely relying on one entity or two entities to provide EMS coverage to the county. We've got to fill in the gaps.
To me, it's a good fit overall. I mean, like in terms of our general idea of the county, it matches up obviously with what our main goal is. And I think us being a leader to whatever extent it ends up being, I think it's a great idea.
You're right, John, because even the fire service has talked for several years now because of the lack of staffing, they're going to have to start regionalizing. To me, this isn't self-supporting. To me, the best regional entity to govern that is the county. We're in existence, and to make that a county entity and to have a regional fire service.
And I respect what Paul's saying about it. I just think, at a certain point, you have to stick your neck out there, and somebody needs to start helping facilitate it. As long as it's done responsibly, I don't think we're going to be in the way of or cause a.
Well, one of the reasons I make this comment, many years ago, I was at a League of Towns meeting, and we were there was talk of regionalizing. They weren't specifically talking about ambulance service, and they were talking about fire service. And wow, you think somebody threw a bomb in the room? It was, it did not go well. And I just would want to make sure that, it's coming from a need. I think it is, because even the ones that are, transporting agencies, they're wrestling with the exact same things you are.
Right.
And luckily there's mutual aid agreements to fall back on, and those are even, there's holes in those now.
Well,
So,
again, that's
maybe it's
the
right.
issue. We're talking about that work fatigue and everything. We'll take, for example, Cherryfield having to cross over and run all the way down into Franklin to the far ends of Franklin. How far away is that one ambulance that's dedicated to Cherryfield now outside of their own jurisdiction, running into our area to cover our area? I mean,
Yeah.
we still have a responsibility to our own individual communities, and I think that becomes the biggest issue.
We have some hands up. Okay, keep remembering it, that we share this with the Zoom attendees. And Rebecca, can you identify somebody that would like to speak?
Yeah, Millard Billings does, and so does
Millard?
Matt Bartlett.
Millard is also a town official in the town of Franklin, as well as our UT director.
And I see the Bar Harbor Fire Chief there also.
I'm trying to, Millard, go ahead.
Thank you. A couple points I would like to make. I was town manager in Tremont when we were discussing this collaboration that Paul mentioned, and nobody wanted to give up their kingdom. The town of Franklin has paid money, an annual fee to county ambulance for years, and they're still continuing to pay to Northern Light Ambulance, but the level of service is nowhere near the same. The UT has funds available for public safety. But that's only in the UT. I think we forget we're used to living in New England and having individual towns, and each town goes their own way. But most of the nation, all of this stuff is done at county level. It does work at county level. I knew it's a new concept, but maybe county government should be the one taking over some of this stuff and moving it forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Millard. Was there somebody else?
Yeah, Matt Bartlett.
Matt?
I'd be curious if the Bar Harbor Fire Chief agrees with that statement.
Well, let's make one thing personal here before Matt speaks, and that is that nothing in my concept takes over any existing EMS service. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to fill the holes that are either poor availability or no availability. Matt, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Unmute.
Oh, he's muted.
Okay.
Good morning. Thank you for letting me speak. I think one of the biggest issues that's facing and why we're in this dilemma that where we are, it's staffing. It is purely a staffing issue where it's a recruitment and retention. 10 years ago, we weren't talking about staffing issues, and now they're in every community, full-time, volunteer. And that is the root of this problem, is the amount of staffing or lack of staffing that we have to provide these services. And that affects our ability to even respond mutual aid. There's times when our staffing level is at a point where we call Northern Light and say, hey, look, we're not available today to be able to provide a service to you if you need us to go to Trenton. So it is the elephant in the room, it's staffing, and we're all struggling with it. I've gone one whole entire year with one opening for because we just aren't getting the applications we used to get. You know, we used to get 20. Now we're lucky to get 3 or 4 for a position. And just to let you know, this is being talked about at a higher level. At the Maine Fire Chiefs level, we're talking about it. It is a problem statewide, nationally. I mean, this is a huge problem everywhere, and maybe we're one of the last ones to be experiencing it. But it is the future is not looking great moving forward as far as recruitment and retention. And we're also faced with a lot of people are going to be retiring out soon. And we're not filling it from the bottom like we need to. So we got a problem coming, not only with keeping staffing, but when we start seeing some retirees, those numbers coming up through the bottom aren't there to keep us where we need to be. It's good that it's being talked about at this level. I think it needs to be broadened because we talk about it locally, but this is not just a local problem. So it's good to see that this discussion is reaching a bigger, to a county level and, into a state level. So, but I do think the biggest issue is their staffing and their recruitment and retention.
Paul?
Do you feel that regionalizing a service like this would help? I mean, if we say that it's a staffing issue, would regionalizing a service help that staffing issue, or are we just barking up the wrong tree?
It will help, but then you're just taking the same amount of people and spreading them over a much wider area. I mean,
That's my concern.
it's still just amount of people, and now you're just trying to move them around, to serve all this wide area. I mean, here alone on Mount Desert Island, if we go mutual aid, it takes us, if we leave right now, and Mount Desert needs us in downtown Northeast, it takes us 20 to 30 minutes to get there. Just kind of how the island's laid out. Not so much in other parts of the county, but down here we are challenged by geographically. So it is hard to take it, like we'll say Bahar, we have 4 full-timers on duty to say well, we can share them elsewhere, which we do through a mutual aid. You're right, Paul, we do have a good mutual aid agreement. But to even broaden it further than that would really hamper, just like the chief said, then we're not serving our community what they're paying for our services, we're everywhere else.
Matt, are there 3 ambulance services, or will all 4 towns have an ambulance service on the island?
There's three ambulance services on the island.
So Southwest, Mount Desert, and Bar Harbor all have their own ambulance services?
Southwest and Tremont are joined.
And Tremont's are,
Southwest and Tremont are together. They're
Okay, so those are the 3 here. Okay, I just wanted to understand that.
and we share our schedules. Like we know when Southwest Harbor maybe doesn't have coverage. We know, so we work very well down here. The 3 services work extremely well together down here. We very much are on the same page. We share schedules. We know what people's schedules are. So I down here on the island, we have a great working relationship with all the responding agencies, first responder agencies. And maybe that's a model people could look at because we definitely work well together.
Well, that is exactly why I was not pushing back, but many of you know, I was Harvard town governor. I was a counselor for a few years. I know how well it works there. And I'm wondering if that model brought this way might be something to look at, just at the same time as we're looking at bringing, another model that way. Because I think that one is working, and there are holes, but I don't think there's as many holes as there is here right now. I don't know if that's an accurate statement. I don't know if you would agree with that, but.
Again, and Chief Bartlett can attest to this. The staffing is the issue. He had an incident here not that long ago where he didn't have enough ambulances.
Yes.
And it was a very significant incident. We run in, again, you guys brought up the incident that happened back in September. We were ambulance shopping. So we can find models. There's going to be a hole in every model that we find. It's just finding a model that's going to fit best geographically.
And that's then the key to this discussion all morning, because we're talking about exploring, we're talking about looking at, we're talking about discussing, we're talking, you know what I mean? That's where we should start. We should start with this small working group made up of the right participants and start looking at what, first of all, what the problem is, and trying to identify those problems with staffing and availability and all that, and working towards what might work for this regional ambulance service, and with an eye towards perhaps encouraging collaboration between existing fire departments. So
Right.
I think if we were going to take any action this morning, gentlemen, I would like to have either by vote or simply by consensus that we would form a working committee to study regional ambulance service for the greater Ellsworth area.
And
And
how about, not the greater Ellsworth area, for Hancock County? You know, and to me, we have a working group. I mean, three of the participants are right here right now. And the Hancock County Firefighters Association, I'm not really familiar what that is, but is that basically the working group?
Well, I mean, it's a click.
I think it's a stakeholder. Because the
Okay.
majority of the fire departments don't provide. I mean, there are ones, like down on the island that do provide EMS service. Majority of the 27, 30 fire departments around that don't provide that service. So I think they're a stakeholder, but I don't think they are working.
But Paul, I don't want this thing to get off on the wrong foot. I don't want the existing communities, Bucksport and Bar Harbor and Mount Desert and those, to think that we're going to organize this committee in an effort to do away with that autonomy.
I don't think
And-
that.
Well, I know it, and I don't want them to think that's the intent of this working committee. That's why I emphasize that what we're really looking at is trying to improve the availability of the greater Ellsworth area that was once served by town county ambulance.
So I understand your point now. You're trying to, you want a working group to solve that, and then if they need to reach out to these other communities, they do that, is that?
And we would welcome people like Chief Bartlett and those to participate and talk about sharing and collaboration and so on.
Right.
But I think my intent is to try to improve the availability of the constituents who were once served by county ambulance that aren't getting the level of EMS response that they need.
So I would support that if I knew that there were willing participants. You know, I hate creating a committee or a group because we see the need and then we have no volunteers to do it. I think, you know, in this instance, if that group needs to come forward and say, hey, we need help from you. This is what we need.
You're right, Paul, because talk is cheap, and I can tell you that I've had this conversation with no less than half a dozen people in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Every one of them enthusiastic about the need for this. Now, whether or not they want to come forward and assist is something else, but I'm encouraged that the chief is here today. I know that Paul Connery, in his dual role as fire chief and RCC director, would welcome the work of this group. And so I don't see any problem getting this core group of people together. And if I can tell them that we can support them with some of the financial needs from APA funds, I think that would go a long ways too.
Yeah, we don't even know what that would be, yes, but.
I think these two, and even if, Chief Bartlett or anybody else on the screen were interested, I guess I would suggest is let these guys have a conversation, mull it over, and bring a solution back to the commissioners. And it may even include at some point, now or later, that you may have an idea as to who might be available for a consultant.
Yeah,
Well, I can tell you, Scott, I want to be involved in this from day one. So I want to, if we're going to have this group, I want to be one of those people involved.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me, and I would encourage that one of the commissioners at least be on there, and I think it should. But I think that they're going to what I hear Commissioner Parity. I agree, you need a buy-in, but in order to get the buy-in, you got to have a game plan. Because if you're trying to convince me of something, my first response is, let's go. What's your plan? What's your business plan? And then so in the business plan, it's going to tell me reasonably. Well, I want to know exactly, but reasonably what it's going to cost me, what that's going to entail, and then what am I getting for that? And I think the only way for the commission to get those ideas is for this working group to throw a few together.
And I'm going to paint it as this. We need a bus driver. We may be able to provide the bus, but we need a bus driver.
Yeah.
And I think having us the bus driver, you're not going to be happy, in my opinion. I think you folks are the ones with the expertise. I mean, you got three people here that,
Yeah.
you know, are a wealth of information on this. And I'd love for you to huddle and say, you know, come back, hey, we'd like to form this, we'd like you to be involved. That's what I would like to hear, as opposed to saying, you know, we're gonna form a, you know, I want the goals to come from you.
But I think the chair's enthusiasm to become part of this is something that the commission should, and I think these guys
Absolutely.
kind of might want to be a little, you know, excited about as well, because, you know, there's a lot of work there to be done, and we're all busy, so just knowing that all this support from both sides, you know, as I always say, communication and respect, you take those two things to the ball field, and you've got a great chance for success, so, yeah.
Sue Lassard, good morning from Bucksport. Do you have a comment, Sue?
Yes, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to say that as the entity on the edge of Hancock County, who's operates a successful fire EMS program that serves Bucksport, Orland, and Verona, I think that there's it's a good idea to look at what's available to spread things out. We're challenged staffing wise, as Chief Bartlett has indicated, both in hiring and in covering what is an increasing number of calls. Our calls have increased 30% in the last 2 years in terms of ambulance service. We're an aging state, and our community is an aging population. That increases need, but we also are challenged with distance. We're not Ellsworth with a hospital in our community. We're 20 miles from any facility, which adds time to response and those challenges. And I guess what I would offer is, because we have been doing it successfully and our experience challenges, I would offer my public safety to participate in a group if that's appropriate. I not in a negative way, in a positive way. The more people that can shoulder the load, the easier it is for those of us who are doing our best to cover the area we're already in.
Thank you, Sue. Miller, did you have another comment?
Yes. I think what you need to consider is, we ran into this issue when we were on MDI and talking about collaboration. The existing infrastructure is fine, it's working, don't mess with it. But there is a void where county ambulance used to be. And if you concentrate on that area, trying to fill that area and make it better than it is now with Northern Light, then once that is done, you can enter mutual aid agreements with these other existing ambulance services maybe. But I do think you need some kind of a plan to be able to sell it to the communities to get their buy-in. I don't think they're going to jump on board with without some sort of a plan in place, or at least for them, a plan for them to pick a pattern, so you need to change line 2, paragraph 3.
I couldn't agree more with Miller. I think it's a huge task if the county or its collaboration group wants to get together and try to solve the EMS problem countywide. This problem that Sue's having in Bucksport, or the problem that Mount Everest having with taking over private entity. I'd like to focus, just as Millard said, on the existing problem of the lack of availability in the greater Ellsworth area. I keep saying that because that's the service area that county ambulance has. And using the resources from these other, the knowledge and expertise from these other departments to help us understand the problem and to perhaps come together with some plan, as Millard says, that we can present to the communities for their consideration.
I think we're all on the same page here, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's, you know, I hopefully you folks can, work together and then involve us, at the appropriate time. That's, I think, my goal. I just think that you're gonna solve the problem before we're gonna solve the problem.
I'm sorry, Paul. This issue needs to be spearheaded by this commission right here. I'm not saying that we direct this to our exclusion as a dictator. I'm simply saying that it needs to be an entity who has a goal, is focused on the need and the goal and whatnot, bring in the available resources such as the chief in Ellsworth and the RCC director and others to form this key group, this core group, to research this and try to come up with a workable plan for addressing the need. And to asking these gentlemen here who's willing to come in this morning and speak to us, go do the work that I've been complaining about here for the last 30 minutes or 45 minutes, I don't think is fair to them. What I'm asking you to do is that I, as representing the county, representing this commission and whatnot, is going to spearhead a group to try to explore this problem, understand it, and come up with a solution. Would you help us do that?
Absolutely.
And that's what I think this board needs to do.
I support that, so I support it. So,
I think there's better bus drivers than us, and I think they're better bus drivers than these folks, and
The only,
we all have to say.
problem, a bus driver hasn't stepped up enough to get it done. So somebody's gonna have to step up to some degree. Like I said, stick your neck out and start doing the work and lead the work. Doesn't mean that we're gonna control everything and that, but
Okay, so
that's all I'm saying.
let's say I agree. So what's it look like? How do we get it going?
I'm going to sit down, and I'd like to be able to ask the chief to assist me and Bob, sit down, try to examine the resources that are out there, see who we think this key group, this core group of organizers and researchers should be, and then pull these people together, sit down, make sure we all understand what our goal is, what our finished product is and whatnot, and see where we should proceed. So it's just a matter of.
We're all talking the same thing.
Okay, so by general consensus, gentlemen, we're going to start working on looking at the problem of lack of availability in the greater Ellsworth area EMS services. And I'm going to accept the offer by the chief, fire chief in Ellsworth, Chief Coolio, and the RCC director to assist us in pulling together a core group. We're going to meet and start working on this. And the reason again, this may involve, at some point, it may involve a consultant, and I'd like to be able to say, tell these people that there is an opportunity for that to be paid for with ARPA funds. We all set with this then?
I think we're all.
Chief, Bob, at some point, I'm going to be contacting you. We're going to sit down, start this process of trying to get this key group of people together for, meet this challenge, okay? Chief, thank you for your time. I appreciate you coming over this morning.
No problem.
Okay. Is there anybody else on with us on Zoom that has a comment before we move on? If not, I'm going to bring Millard back. Millard, you have a couple of UT issues. Oh, wait a minute. Are we all set, Kitty?
I think we are. The only other thing is Rebecca and I are working on updating the website to add a little bit more information about broadband. And we'll also showcase the nonprofit that been funded the program.
You and John ride together? You and John ride together?
No.
I didn't want to tie you. John, in the future, as you can see, this could occupy some time and whatnot. I'm going to get you in and get your business out. Don't feel as though because it's after the discussion that you need to say. We know that you're very busy with your work, so you get to it.
I enjoyed the conversation.
You did. Well, if you know anything about fire service, you're welcome to join the core group. Philip.
Good morning, Commissioners. In your packet, there should be an email thread from Adam Wilson and I back and forth. And I believe Adam Wilson is available through Zoom.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
I apologize, I don't have video.
That's okay. You can hear us and you can respond, right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna move to accept the Hancock County Unorganized Territory Scholarship 2021 application from William Wilson, award him a scholarship for an amount up to $25,000.
Seconded.
And Millard and Adam, we understand that Adam is actively, he's in his first year at MMA presently.
No, so William is at his first year.
Oh, of course, Adam, right, so I'm sorry.
That's the father.
And I know Adam well. So William is in his first year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. He just got inducted into the regiment. He finished his MUG training last week, which is Midshipman Under Guidance Study, I believe is what that stands for. He's enjoying his time over there. It's been his passion since probably his freshman year.
Now, Millard, you've explained that William and Adam and whatnot, the need to reapply annually for this. This is a one-time.
Yeah, so this is a once-a-year scholarship, so apply every year and
Right, okay, just as long as both William and Adam understand that if.
And this, to be clear, this is a 2021 application, as I read it.
yes. Current year. Yep.
Oh, yeah, 21, 22. 21, 22, right?
Yes, 21, 22 school year.
School
School
year,
year,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
September 21 to June 22.
Right.
Yeah, it's like calendar and fiscal year, but yeah.
Okay, any further discussion with regards to the motion?
Did you ask Mr. Wilson if he would bring his son in at some point to just kind of introduce himself to you folks, or when he has an opportunity? But
You guys want to-
I think it would be nice for him to come in and meet the commission.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's busy.
Adam, I guess at some point, sometime, if William could stop in and we'd like to meet him.
Absolutely. He's actually, I think he starts break next week for the Thanksgiving. If you give me a time, I can make sure that he's there and meets, and that way if there's any more questions, he could answer them.
Okay, traditionally, we meet the first Tuesday and the third Tuesday of every month. If one of those days is convenient, I'd ask him to contact County Administrator Scott Adkins and confirm that he's going to stop by, okay?
Okay, absolutely. Thank you.
And just to be clear, this has nothing to do with.
Correct, yeah.
We're to satisfy our curiosity and meet this young man. This motion is the action that we need to do, and
Right,
his visit is not predicated on that.
correct, yeah.
Adam, how many year program is this? Is it a 2-year program or a 4-year program?
It's a 4-year program. It's a marine operations mechanical engineering. It's a where it's not only an offshore engineering degree, but it could also be an onshore, like a hospital power plant or something of that nature.
Okay, thank you. But be sure and apply every year. The amounts may vary depending on how many other applicants there are, but be sure and apply every year.
Okay, very well. Okay,
Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time and your generosity.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Adam.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson, and please wish William our best. We're anxious to meet him. Sounds like a great young man.
He's I'm very partial to him, but
He comes from good stock, Adam.
All right, thank you.
All right, moving on, the snow.
Thank you, Commissioners. I think these scholarships are the best use of this TIF money there is. The other thing I had, and I asked Rebecca to put it on the agenda, was snow removal. Because when we were putting the agenda together, I still didn't have a written contract for snow removal for Fletcher's Landing Township. But I have since got the signed contract, so we are all set. Both of them will be in charge of the snow removal for Fletcher's Landing.
Okay,
And
you understand, yeah, you understand the situation, gentlemen? That Waltham will be doing, yeah, Fletcher's Landing as well as Waltham, same contractor. All documents.
I've spoken to the contractor that has a contract with Waltham, and he's aware and ready to take over and all set to go.
Very good. Anything else from UT this morning, Millard?
That's everything I've got. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let's move on. Scott Adkins, you have the county audit.
Yep, I placed a copy of it. It's in the binder that's on your desk. But I've got set up with the auditor. He's finalizing the UT audit as we speak. But he's out of the office right now. So planning on sometime in December, give you a chance to review it. If you have any questions, I'm gonna have him appear before you, probably via Zoom. And have him go over it. If you have any questions, I'll give you the time. If you have any questions in the meantime, you can always email me, call me, or contact me. So sit on that one.
Gentlemen, anything else with regards to the audit? Let's move on then to the county buy down policy. Rebecca?
Yep. So I would just like for you to approve the 2022 buyout buy down policy, if you wish. There's no change to the amounts of the stipends. The only difference between last year's policy and this one is the last two items, life insurance and the wellness program. We're just removing those because those are really sort of left over from when we had our self-funded health insurance. They don't apply.
Yes, Paul.
In the administrator's notes, he recommends waiting for any changes based on the July 22nd, the July 22 renewal date. Is there, you're asking for approval, but that says that we should wait till July.
I think we're on the same page, aren't we, Scott?
Yeah, that's why we'll recommend to approve it. Just if you're gonna make any changes, so I would recommend to approve it as it is. If you're going to make any changes, wait until we get the renewals in July.
Okay.
The numbers that are established in there are all set
But that's all.
until July, until we get a.
Okay, so I'm gonna move to approve the 2022 buy down policy as presented.
Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Acadia benefits.
And this one, asking you to approve a year contract for Acadia Benefits and their consulting services. They've stayed with the same fee that that we've had for several years. I think it's particularly important this year because we're so up in the air with COVID and, changes coming with that. It's a lot to juggle. And they're a really good resource for us.
I'm gonna move to approve the 2022 Acadia benefits contract as presented and recommended.
Seconded. Motion made and seconded. Paul, you haven't had any experience with it yet, but I can tell you that they are very beneficial.
Yeah, no, you brought that up before and
Yeah, I think the fact we don't have any glaring issues is evidence enough that this works well.
Okay, I'm going to call a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. We have a modification to the workers' comp. Rebecca?
Yeah, so this is just an update. A year and a half ago or so, we voluntarily engaged in the workers' comp safety incentive plan, and the goal I mean, you've got my memo, so you know the goal of that was to reach all 3 tiers, which we did, which was great. So we got a savings of 10% on our workers' comp payment, which was pretty significant. That was about $17,000.
Savings?
Yeah, yeah, so that was a big deal. But from that, in order to stay at that level, there are a few things that we need to work on. I'm gonna work with Dan Whittier, who's our loss control consultant, to focus on specific areas. We have a loss control plan. I just wanted to let you know that where we are with that, and that I probably will be bringing back some policies for you to approve that are specific to that.
So one of my questions is what comes out of that, and the policies is the end product.
Yeah, I mean, so the goal is really overall sort of workplace safety awareness.
Yeah.
And in order to satisfy those tiers, they want more than practice and awareness. They want specific policies in place.
So that's the measures.
Yes,
Policies
yes.
in place. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, we've been practicing them and we've seen the results and they saw the results. Unfortunately, as I reported earlier, we lost a good year and gained a really bad year. And in an organization this size, it only takes 1 or 2 really to kind of spoil the orchard a little bit. That's what we're experiencing. And, I just got an email yesterday actually from workers' comp, and there are 2 actual deductions. One is 10 and one is 9%. And this program kind of hinges with both of them. So for instance, one is a return to work policy, to have an actual written policy with regards to that, again, even though we practice it. So you can actually double that 17,000, and it's actually 35,000 is the number that we're talking about. How exactly they interact and how they reduce each one, I'd rather just comply rather than, try to figure out. I'd rather just do it, and it certainly shows and it's beneficial to us, so.
So I'm going to move to approve the 2022 Workers' Comp Safety Incentive Program as presented and recommended.
Seconded.
Does this require action?
Not necessarily, although I suppose I would like to have your blessing to move
Okay.
forward
Yeah,
with that.
Action.
I think it's important,
Yeah.
Especially if we're
Sure,
gonna-
sure, yeah.
I thought you were just giving it to us as an update, but
Shows your support. Yeah.
any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Last issue is the COVID policy. Now, I thought there was appeals or something that said stayed this December 5th deadline.
It appears, you're right, Commissioner, it appears, and that's becoming more of the discussion in the last 12 hours, is that based on the recent court decisions that those effective dates of December 5th and January 4th, or maybe vice versa, are really no longer in play. Matter of fact, we even received, I don't know if I forwarded it to you or not, but an email from Redmond themselves that, just a client email that basically stated that kind of this is going to be put on hold for how long? Who knows? I would suspect at least 30 days at a minimum.
So today, because that deadline, 5th, and we met the 7th,
Right.
because that's been stayed, you don't need to take action today on this, is correct?
I don't think so. I think Beck and I really haven't had a chance to talk about this. That's my thought process. I'll let you weigh in on it. I think you might want to, just continue to review some of the outline that she's given you and some of the specifics.
So when I wrote, it's very fluid. So when I wrote this memo, there were some appeals and some court action had taken place. There's since been some more, and OSHA, since I wrote this memo, has taken the position that they're not going to enforce the ETS until further court order action has been determined. So these ETS are all, I guess it's a wait and see kind of thing.
Rebecca, is there any need to go through this and have it ready before the deadline date?
I think, well, maybe not before the deadline date, but I think it would be important to get it ready. Yeah. Or at
I mean,
least,
there are some things in here that I think requires discussion and a decision, and one of them is testing for non-vaccinated employees. How do we accomplish that?
Well, that may come out of,
Right.
so I'm not sure we should be taking any action until we know what the rule is my gut feel.
So obviously, they wouldn't say, here's the rule, do it now. I mean, here's the rule, and we're gonna.
I think they would if they could.
Yeah, I'm not sure they can.
So in other words, they'll give us the final rule and say, okay, you have until this date to implement these, correct?
Well, it all depends on what the court action is. Yeah. I kind of expect that there won't be any resolution to this until it gets to the Supreme Court, but I don't know when that will be. I don't know. It changes very quickly.
So there's nothing we need to do.
No, I guess I would just, I guess my recommendation would be that you would sort of direct your staff to keep on top of it and maybe develop some policies for you to review in case this does go through. I don't want to be caught unprepared.
No, and we should know. Well, I think we would do that naturally. Yeah. I mean, yeah, we'll do that.
Is it premature to survey our employees to see who's been vaccinated and who hasn't?
Maybe, we've done that somewhat informally. It hasn't really, it's been sort of a volunteer basis kind of thing. When there's a COVID exposure, those are important things to know, so we know how to deal with the exposure.
What's the downside of doing that now?
Well, we might run into some kickback from the unions. So from what I understand, it's not a HIPAA violation to ask for that information, and most employers are doing it.
I was gonna say, we're doing it at Home Depot. It's voluntary, obviously,
Yeah,
but it's all in place.
Did you
It's-
did you have to show verification?
Actually, in our case, you're also like registered to, get $10,000 or whatever kind of thing, but you put in your, like I've uploaded all my card, show when I got vaccinated and everything. But right now it's all voluntary, but it's all kind of getting the ducks in a row sort of thing, all goes through. So
Do you think you have a pretty good idea what the numbers are?
I think so. I think we have a pretty good idea. I mean, I might be surprised, but I think that we have many more who are vaccinated than are not. I don't know that. But that's what it appears.
I would agree with that based on the last scenario.
Would knowing that affect our final decision on policy?
Yeah, probably, but because it might be a factor in how we administer it, in terms of testing. And I mean, I guess the biggest question is, do you want to, if these ETS go into effect, do you want to, do the sledgehammer approach and say all employees have to be vaccinated, period? Or do you want to allow for testing?
And we have the ability to do that?
As far as the ETS are written now, yes.
Well,
I'm for not taking any action on this because we don't know what's gonna come down the pike. I don't wanna send a message one way and something comes down the pike the other way. I think we need to wait and see. The sledgehammer, we don't even know which one to take out yet. So I'm for, thank you for keeping us up to date, keep us up to date. When we need to take action, my guess is you'll let us know. That's how I feel.
Rebecca, do you want, I guess I'm kind of uncertain. So like right now, have you already developed some of the policy? Am I right or no?
Well, yes and no. I have an idea of some drafts, but I haven't.
Framework.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
How much time do you want to put towards creating the policy before we know exactly where we're going to be, do you think?
Well, that's a good question. I think my time would be more effectively spent when we know exactly what we need to apply.
Yeah, I think the rule is going to essentially develop a policy for you.
Okay, I just want to make
There's,
sure.
right now, like, a lot of the questions are, what is, and there really aren't any answers without getting maybe legal involved with regards to such as testing as the chair
Sure.
asked. So, maybe this, I think that will be part of what might get flushed out in the courts to get a more specific details around this.
Okay, I think we can all agree that there's no action needed today, that we need to let Rebecca keep us informed and update us when there's a change in the situation.
Chair, I have one, it's kind of tied into this. So we received a request this morning for remote working. We haven't really gotten to the point of discussing some of the consequences or situations as a result of COVID. Any input from the commission as to how you want to handle that? I believe it's as a result of daycare.
Of what?
Daycare. Or school, actually school went to remote learning and the employee has no daycare or ability to. It's my we just got this morning. I don't know if you know any more, Beck, but.
No, I know as much as you.
Well, thinking out loud, I don't think we want to develop a general policy that any employee for any reason or for no reason can come back to remote learning. I'm just thinking out loud. But do we want to consider that for special cases depending upon the need? And that's a slippery slope. One of us would say childcare is not good enough. Something is, I don't know.
Well, if I could make a suggestion, we could, when we think about things like providing accommodations under the ADA, we can look at things like remote work. But when it comes to general policy, your expectation always has been that employees would be in the workplace. So if that's the expectation, I think we could use remote working as possibly an option under certain scenarios that would fall under different categories.
The daycare would follow ADA.
No, it wouldn't.
No, not, sorry.
Paul?
I think we're jumping the gun. I think we just got this morning. I think
It must be necessary now, though, right?
Well, yeah, I would like to have a little conversation just to affirm what I think Rebecca is saying. I completely agree that if this is for like a short term, a few days, it involves school, remote learning, daycare. We've been in this pandemic long enough so that we should have, plan B and C. We'll do everything we can for our employees to take care of them, which means that this should be this option should be available for a different scenario, which may even include, other than ADA, may include long-term, a longer term than just say a week or two or something like that. I mean, that, and we currently are not set up to allow that for everybody to do that. So my recommendation to the commission is to essentially let your administration inform you if there's a situation that fits that scope. Otherwise, the commissioners, and we deliver that message to the department head. This is what the commissioner's wishes are. If you object to it, you can file an appeal to them or come into the next meeting or whatnot. But as long as we deliver that consistent message.
Well, for the second time in 35 days, my granddaughter has been quarantined for 10 days because she simply had contact with a fellow student that had COVID. That's 20 days, or not, it's not 20, and all childcare days, but there's 20 days potentially affecting the parents for childcare. And I can tell you it's serious. It's as serious as accommodating somebody who has a medical need under ADA. So
if I could throw, and I'm trying to remain a little somewhat objective here, but we've had situations that I'm aware of, and I've had this idea brought to me before, and I've replied in the manner that I just requested the commission support, and they worked it out. it hasn't been easy. This whole pandemic has not been easy for anybody. So yes, Jay, I fully recognize that it is an issue, which means that if it's a longer term issue, then we have another discussion. But at this time, this one appears to be short term. It's also coming from a department that I'm probably going to be bringing you a couple of other issues. And one of them is attendance in that department. So I'm not really in favor of us not necessarily vital. Well, we have, to go outside of a policy that we currently exist because I don't think the situation warrants it.
Is your suggestion that you let this get resolved by the department head and the employee?
Without remote work, in other words, they're gonna have to use vacation or sick time while they're out. And so the workload in the office needs to be until it's proven to be.
Can the department head say to the employee, yes, you can do remote work? And that's fine as far as we're concerned.
As far as I'm concerned, no, because the commissioners have basically said that in policy that in order for that to be established, it comes before you. That changed. That changed when we did away with the summer.
That's why today we need to decide whether or not we will allow remote learning for childcare issues. That's specific to the problem today that this.
Not learning, well,
Right.
right,
I'm sorry, remote working.
Yeah.
Due to childcare issues, because that's the issue today, that this employee needs guidance.
Well, it's a part of the issue. There are other factors, I think, which we can sort out. I think once we have, I think what we'd really like from you, working remotely was one of the provisions under the FFCRA, which ended September 30th. And after that, the expectation, we communicated that to employees, the expectation was that they would be in the workplace.
You see, I've got a real problem trying to develop countywide policy based upon one particular incident in one particular employee.
Which is why I think if we stay consistent to where we're currently at, then.
As much as I'd like to accommodate somebody with childcare issues, especially,
Well, I will also comment that I'm pretty damn sure this has been going on unauthorized. So again, I'm not inclined, I'm starting to venture into a different subject, so keeping it simple.
well, my feeling is we have a policy. Don't deviate that policy till our administrator and deputy administrator HR come to us and say, we need to change this. I mean, really, they're the folks that this commission is delegated to running the office. I think we need to let them run the office. And I know I'm oversimplifying, but I don't see anything productive other than a mess of us taking some action. Because I think there's too many unintended consequences.
Right, and you've already actually taken this action. I'm just here to, because of the request this morning and some underlying tone of it, I just want to be solid when I give them my answer.
Yep.
You have a policy.
We got the policy in place. We'll keep it in place.
Just one comment that I'd like to make is that when issues with employees and personnel come to us, we are not unreasonable. And we do everything everything that we can to make sure, the employees are taken care of. But we also have to consider the whole context. And so sometimes decisions like this create hardships in other areas that we kind of have to be prophetic about that and look ahead. So that's part of the issue.
Okay, a general consensus, we're going to follow existing policy for the time being. We're not prepared today to change that policy. Okay?
All right, thank you.
Okay. Gentlemen, I'm going to call it a 5-minute recess.